award across excellence in cybersecurity. He has led IT audit and cybersecurity advisory teams, offering services including cybersecurity assessment and IT audits, among very many other things. So he's a distinguished member of, he's a distinguished subject matter expert with the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. He's also a member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals and the Information Security and Control Association, and holds several certifications. You are welcome, Rodney, to this month's webinar. Please take us away. All right, we seem to have lost Rodney again. Let's get in touch with him and find out what the problem is.
Hi, Grace.
Hi, Rodney. It's good to have you back. Please, I had already introduced you, so you can start the webinar. You can start your discussion.
Okay, I hope you can.
Yes, we can.
Sorry?
We can hear you and we can see your screen. Please go ahead.
This connection is quite worst.
Yes, Rodney, we can hear you and we can see your screen.
Really? That is surprising because the connection shows very unstable on my side.
Okay, it may be unstable on your side, but right now we are hearing you perfectly. We are seeing your presentation.
Okay, perfect. Good morning and apologies for that. I just got a new machine and the network access control is behavioral based. So I think it occasionally kicks me out because I've used it for only 2 or so days now. So yeah. Otherwise, I hope everyone is fine and good morning and apologies for that. And I don't expect to again to take so much time just to ensure that we have a good discussion. And Grace, I want to request that if you don't hear me, you just say and that I know.
All right, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. I'll not delve into this. When I was there, you were introducing me, so I'll just move straight into it because idea the discussion we're going to have, and I welcome you all to this webinar. We're going to have the discussion in terms of attempting to dissect the role of AI and machine learning in data protection and privacy. Of course, just by definition itself, from the basic understanding of AI and machine learning and its capabilities, we do understand some of the sorts of data that is needed for us to be able to achieve this, but also the sort of data that has to go as input into AI. This is just the first slide, more or less gives a brief overview of what ideal AI is and how then it combines with all of these things to produce the bigger picture. So AI, just to the basic person, is a subfield of computer science with the goal of creating programs that can perform tasks generally performed by humans. And ideally, the basic item here is it's intelligence, but it's artificial. If it were natural, then that will be human intelligence. But being that now it's intelligent, but it's artificial, that's the idea of what AI basically is about. So you're having computers or algorithms or programs that are expected to carry out tasks that will generally be performed by human beings. But of course, AI in itself also has its own other components or branches. I've tried to list a few of them here. And one of them is machine learning. Machine learning, which basically is a branch of AI which focuses on algorithms and data to imitate the way humans learn and gradually improving its accuracy. And what this means is that the machine is continuously learning. How does this human work? How does how is this data expected to behave? So ideally, you're using the data, using the algorithm, trying to imitate how humans learn, and that allows you to be able to gradually improve, allows the machine to be able to gradually improve in its thinking, machine to be able to gradually improve in how it does things. So basically, that's again machine learning, just a small branch of AI that ideally is concerned with that. Then we come to NLP, which is natural language processing. And in this case, ideally, you're attempting to give computers, algorithms, the ability to understand text and to understand spoken word in the same way that human beings can. Ideally, the basic concept is I'm speaking to a machine, but I should not be able to differentiate whether I'm speaking to a machine or a human. The understanding would be I'm speaking to a machine, the machine is giving me feedback, I am giving it feedback. But I cannot differentiate whether this is a machine or this is a human, because the machine is processing information in the same exact way as a human would process, and I can actually have a sensible conversation with it. So basically, that's what NLP is. It's again another branch of AI. So that's natural language processing. Then finally, one of the key things that I also brought out here is in terms of predictive analytics. And predictive analytics is something that is futuristic, because basically what you're doing is you're looking at previous data, looking at all data and saying, okay, based on data, based on this all data, this is how we can predict the future. And basically, that is what predictive analytics does. So you're doing basic and very advanced analytics, and you're trying to have a prediction about the outcome of the future in terms of how you combine that with statistical modeling, you combine that with data mining, and also you combine that with machine learning, just for you to be able to achieve that. So again, from this very introduction, you can clearly see that AI in itself has a very big potential in terms of the industry, or in terms of how tech operate, in terms of how organizations operate, in terms of how even humans operate. And it is clear that there are really concepts that you can borrow from here, and its applications don't necessarily stop on whatever we've covered yet. It's a really broad topic, but just try to bring out those that will be essential to special aspects pertaining to processing of PII, personally identifiable information. So ideally, that is at a very high level what you just need to understand by AI, by machine learning. So based on this background, it has to lead the future discussion for you to really understand what you're talking about. Again, here we're just seeing what are people saying in the space. What the experts, one would say, in the space, saying what do they think about AI. It has really huge potential, but also from the perspective of what it can bring and what it cannot bring, there are really some discussions that are happening around that. And here I've just given you some two key important quotes. One from Elon, who says, "I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish." I mean, with AI, we are summoning the demon. So in this case, ideally, what Elon is saying is that we see there's very huge potential in this AI, but also we don't see a regulatory framework around that. And he's advocating for regulatory oversight at the national and international level, because the way AI is doing things now, we may get to a point where we do something that is really foolish, and that is the fear. And I know many of you should be familiar with the letter that has been co-signed by Elon and quite a number of other key people in tech that really are saying, okay, yes, there's AI, but how do we make it responsible? The discussion around responsible AI, discussion around ethical AI. So there's that, of course. The last statement in itself, I mean, with AI, we are summoning the demon, is alarming. So the good things that AI can bring on board, but of course there are also bad things that can come out of that. And Alan Turing, who, well, one would say is, I don't know, for my own understanding, I take him as the father of computing. So it says a computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was a human. So ideally, from his own definition of an intelligent machine, is that I should not be able to differentiate that I'm speaking to a machine, I'm speaking to a human. So that's now where aspects of things like natural language processing would come. Things like large language models will come. Things like the ChatGPT that we're talking about now would come in play, or OpenGPT. The idea, AutoGPT, sorry. The idea is that when I'm speaking to this machine, there should not be any doubt, or there should not be any way for someone to actually talk. I'm actually speaking to a machine, not a human. And that's the definition of what will be an intelligent machine. And basically, that is really what AI is about. You expect that the machine is really performing tasks that will be generally performed by humans, but also you can actually interact with the machine, and the machine can give you feedback without you necessarily differentiating that you're interacting with the machine. So this is really what the big boys are saying on AI. But then there's now us, the the ordinary population. What are we saying? These are results of some surveys, very important. There's a 2020 European Consumer Organization survey, which says, which found that 45 to 60% of Europeans agree that AI will lead to more abuse of personal data. The basic concept is, for you to have an AI model, you're going to have to consume as much information. You're going to have to consume a lot of information, and that information is subject to abuse. If it's not responsible AI, but also that information again can land into the wrong hands. So there's a fear. I think 45 to 60% is a very high number, that AI will lead to more abuse of our personal data. You're collecting this a lot of information. You need to process that information. That information needs to go into a pattern recognition algorithm for you to identify patterns and for you to be able to identify key trends. So that is also there still in play. And of course, the discussions around the fact that that will lead to abuse of personal data. So that's something that we're going to explore, but also because it will have both its benefits and both its failures. That was 2020. In the 2022 Consumer Privacy Survey, 60% of consumers expressed concern about how organizations apply and use AI today. And again, related to what we have discussed and what Elon's concerns were, is that people still are concerned about how organizations are going to apply AI, and concerns around whether it will be applied in an ethical and responsible format. We've probably seen some depictions of images produced by AI. One of the most recent ones was one where the Holy Father was in sneakers. I think he was playing ball or something. So of course there are still fears in terms of that, in terms of how do we actually use AI responsibly. And the Holy Father himself even had to come and make comments in terms of, yes, this AI is good, but we also need to ensure that we use it responsibly. So there are still concerns, general concerns about the population in terms of how AI can be applied. But then more importantly, the 2023 Data Privacy Benchmark Survey. Now, yes, 96% of security professionals state that they already have processes in place to meet the responsible and ethical standards of privacy in AI as consumers expect. So on one side, we see consumers are complaining in 2020 and in 2022, but on one side now we're seeing the security professionals saying, look, yes, we do understand your concerns, but 96% of them are saying we already have the processes in place for us to be able to meet the responsible and ethical standards of privacy in AI, which is really important because for you to be able to gain from something, you need to be able to gain consumer trust, which is very important, which is very key. So seeing security professionals come out in that way to state that we are there, we are ready, and we think we have the solution is quite important. And it's one could say it's comforting to the consumer to understand that the actual concerns around that and the security professionals are implementing the relevant controls around that. So again, that is really what is being said about AI, what the leaders are saying, what the general population is also saying. But also now, more importantly, is we just want to probably have a brief chat. What have we done with that? What have we done with AI? Because it's been with us. We've seen some use cases of it. We've seen it being used, but from a layman's perspective, what have we done? What have we done? What do we see? So these are some, you could call them AI applications that are being used now. Of course, one that you should be very familiar with is ChatGPT, which is an AI chatbot. So I'll not really delve so much into that because that ideally is a chatbot. I have a question, I give the question to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will give me a response, and then we can interact at what one could say probably at a more personal level than that. Of course, this is Microsoft's version of that, but also there's Google's version that was meant to compete with it, which I didn't include here, which is Google's AI Bard. but that's also there. It's more or less the same. There are quite a number of other applications that are really using. For example, one that I find important is VidBuy. So what VidBuy does is you have a video, you upload the video to VidBuy, and the VidBuy will translate that video for you. If you had a movie and the movie was in English, and you didn't understand the language, you wanted that movie translated to Spanish, what you just do, you just upload the movie to VidBuy, and VidBuy will do that for you, and it will automatically translate the movie from one language to the other. Of course, it's a paid service, so it's expensive. I think it's about 0.9, if I'm not mistaken, $0.9 per I think per minute for video, which is quite expensive. So there's that. There's Tamara. Tamara is more or less, you could say, a PA, a personal assistant. It does text analysis. It reads email. It reads text before you send, and probably provides you with a better way to communicate. It allows you to communicate better. That is Tamara, but you can also see that now Tamara will need access to your email. Tamara will need access to your texts, which of course there will be concerns with in that space. VidBuy, you need to give access to video and whatever. Codium AI is really for devs, for developers. What Codium AI does is, as you're developing, Codium AI is going to propose solutions to you. It's going to propose tests while you're carrying out your dev. And in that process, you're able to produce secure code to begin with, but then you're also able to be able to develop tests for your code on the go. So you find a situation where ideally you're developing secure code, a situation where you're developing code that is tested on the fly. So that's what ideal Codium AI gives you. But of course, now there'll be aspects of intellectual property in there, being that you're a developer, and then you also have to share that information. There's Chat AI-able. Chat AI-able really is more or less from a data analytics perspective and visualization perspective. It analyzes millions of variables. You give it a set of data to analyze it, and it will attempt to generate for insights that you can use to drive your decision making. So there's that. And then there's Siri, which is a natural language processing to provide you with responses on knowledge, on creativity, on art, and basically what it does is you have a situation that it's more or less like what one could say another version of an AI chatbot, where you have a query, you put it there, it gives you some sort of responses, and you can also interact with the same way you interact with ChatGPT. Then finally, there's AutoGPT. AutoGPT, which is the successor of ChatGPT. Of course, it attempts to overcome the limitations of ChatGPT, because for you to be able to interact successfully with ChatGPT, you need to structure your questions in a way that ChatGPT would understand. You need to structure a question in a specific way. If I ask the same sets of questions and someone asks the same sets of questions, I may not be able to get the same responses. So there's a limitation on ChatGPT in that it depends on the person who is interacting with it and the sorts of questions. Like when you're doing an interview, what's the first question you ask? Then what would be the next question? Does it have a leading question to another question? So it depends on how the person who's doing the interview structures it. But what AutoGPT does is you give one question and it attempts to overcome that limitation by it self-creates prompts and feeds those prompts back to itself. So it will create what we call a loop. And what that will mean is that regardless of how poor your question structure is, AutoGPT will attempt to give you the best response to your query. So really, that is it in terms of how we've used AI right now in the environment for us to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And that is really especially from a technology perspective. But then we may just have to also look at it more from a business perspective and how AI is being used in terms of general industry. So there are quite a number of things that we need to assess here. So one of them is AI is being used for customer request, meaning a customer can, if there's data privacy request, let's say a right to access the information that can be subject, that can be sent to AI, and AI can be able to give that information. There'll be aspect in terms of the DPIA, but I'll come to that. But in terms of the general use, AI can be used in loan appraisal, especially in terms of assessing the credit worthiness of the customer based on previous patterns of probably of loans, of behavior that can be done, can be achieved, can be used in financial investment approval, can be used in customer information or support in terms of chatbots. There's a question, there's a chatbot, customers the question, they put it there, and the bot will be able to provide the response. So that's the high level really in terms of how it can be applied for us to be able to gain value from AI. So there are quite a number of possible applications of AI that are feasible in terms of our environment. But again, from what we see here, from what we've done with AI, both in industry and from a tech perspective, can clearly see that there's a need for AI to collect a lot of data. There's a need for AI to take in a lot of data. There's a need for that data to be processed, and much of this information is what we will call PII, personal identifiable information, that is governed by law and by the Data Protection Act. So what again this means is that we need to really put in some effort. One, in terms of ensuring that in whatever AI we use, whatever AI tool that we use, privacy has to be embedded in AI. There's a lot of information that it is consuming. There's a lot of information that AI is taking in. At the end of the day, there's need for that. But also more importantly is as business leaders or as business technology leaders, you should be able to consider whether you actually need AI in the first place before even going into it. Because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you say, okay, I actually want an AI solution, but I don't know what I want it for. That is tricky because you first need to know, I want it to do this. Yeah. So you need to be able to consider whether I actually need it, because with it comes responsibility of ensuring that the data that you have is actually correct. So you need to be able to, it's correct and it's actually protected. So you need to be able to do that, to be able to have that assessment and say, yes, we want it, but we want it to do this. Not the situation where we want it, but we don't know exactly what we want it to do. So again, as I shared earlier, discussions around responsible AI, discussions around ethical AI, discussions around ensuring that AI does not get out of hand being had, but also that letter, in a way, that letter actually by Elon and the group is actually a key part of academia these days. For most AI labs, the discussions around that letter in terms of whether actually it makes sense, because it more or less seeks to stop innovation in that space. But there's a lot of risk there in terms of privacy breaches. Yeah. So ideally, as part of this solution that we want to build with AI, again, want to have a solution where we enhance privacy. And I've just listed some 4 key aspects of how we want to develop an AI solution that is perfect. But then how do we enhance, how do we build AI in a way that AI has aspects of privacy? Because it has to take in all this information. And one of the key things is ensuring that there's good data hygiene. What this basically means is you don't have to collect a lot of information for you to be able to create an AI model or one AI tool, because the expectation goes back to the principle of data privacy, the principles of minimalization. Collect only that which you need. So you need to ensure good data hygiene, and the data that's collected should only be the data that is relevant for you to be able to achieve purpose that you want to achieve in terms of building AI, but also it has to be secure and maintained only for as long as it is necessary for the task to be completed. That's one of the key things in terms of how we do enhance privacy in AI, and this is in the AI tool itself. Then the second is aspect in terms of good data sets. So when you're building AI, you should ensure that the data that you're using to build that model, data that you're feeding in that model is accurate, it is fair, it's you could say it's a representative data set. And where possible, there should be, developers should build some AI algorithms that actually audit and ensure the quality of other algorithms, because you have an algorithm, but you need a way to ascertain that algorithm actually doing what it's supposed to do. So there should be accompanying algorithm that actually check that the algorithm is doing what it's supposed to do. So good data sets is very, very important to ensure that whatever decisions that are made by that AI model are based on correct data, and the decisions that are made by the AI actually accurate. The third aspect in enhancing privacy in AI, again, giving users control. It's users' data. It's a data of the data subject. So you need to give them control. The user should be given choice to consent to data use, because again, if you look at the aspects of the law, the user is supposed to consent in terms of processing their data for automated decision making. So for you to be able to enhance that privacy in AI, you need to ensure that you actually give users control. Users should know where the data is being used. Users should know whether, even to begin with, whether AI is being used to make decisions about them. I'm putting in a loan application. I don't know whether it's to be done by a human. So it's important that I actually do that, and I know that, and I should be able to consent to the use of such data. So again, control has to go back to the user. Then finally, the other key aspect here is in terms of reducing algorithmic bias. The idea is the algorithm will do quite a number of things, but you need to ensure that the data that you feed into the algorithm is broad and inclusive, because an AI model is more or less like let's say an ML model, because it's going to go through a teaching and learning process. So for it to be able to make the right decision, it has to learn, and it makes a decision based on what it has learned. So you need to ensure that the data sets that are provided for learning are broad, are inclusive, and present challenges. But the only issue there is, of course, most of the data, of course, there have been instances where AI models have had challenges, presented challenges, especially for groups such as women. And there have been situations for women, for minorities. Other groups find that some of these models have not been, the aspects of diversity and inclusion. So you find individuals with voice impairments, the elderly have not been able to get, we could say, correct decisions or favorable decisions made by AI due to some of this algorithmic bias, because many of the models are built on data collected from ideally people that are not in that age group, not all. So you find that some of the decisions that will be made may be of bias to women, maybe of bias to minorities. So that's really in terms of how to ensure that there's privacy in the AI tool that you develop. But again, there've been cases where actually AI has been found to be in violation of privacy, and I'll just quote some cases from case law, because there've been some fines. If you do remember, there's an AI, I don't know whether you'll be familiar, there's an AI called Clearview. There's Clearview AI that was found to be in violation of the Australian Privacy Act, because I think it was collecting images and biometric data without consent. So there's an investigation with Australia's Data Protection Authority, which is the OAIC, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, and the UK's ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. So now there was that investigation. I think the UK's ICO was intended to pose, it was quite a hefty fine. I think it was 17 million pounds for Clearview, because it was clearly in violation. But also, I find that this thing was in Australia, the UK jumped in, but then eventually even France came and also ordered them to stop processing the information. And then somewhere along the way, Australia also came, and sorry, Canada also came and said, so Clearview, you are cleared in violation of it was an AI tool, but it was cleared in violation of privacy procedures. So that is there. So there was that. And also, if you remember, in 2021, in the Netherlands, the Dutch Protection Authority, there was a fine of about 2.75 million euros that was announced against the Dutch Tax and Customs Administration because they violated GDPR violation for possessing the nationality. So they possess the nationality of applicants using a machine learning model in a discriminatory manner. So what was funny is that according to that algorithm that they were using to assess citizenship, that algorithm was identifying people with dual citizenship as high risk. So what that will mean is that claims that were made by people that had dual nationality, you will find a situation where their claims will be considered to be fraudulent, because the model, according to the model, anyone that had a dual citizenship was considered to be systemic and high risk. So that processing was considered fair. So it was considered unfair because there was bias. There was already bias in that particular assessment, and that fine was levied against the Dutch Revenue Authority for violation of GDPR guidelines. There was that, and then probably one fine that I can cite was the one from Italy, where the Italy's GDPR Data Protection Authority find that there's a food delivery company in Italy called Garanti. For those who've stayed in Italy for some time, you know it's a very common. It's Italy's version. Okay, that will not be right. I can't say it is Italy's version of Jumia. It is Uganda. Jumia is Uganda's version of Garanti. So the DPA of Italy, which idea we call the Garanti. So the food delivery was called Deliveroo, Deliveroo, something of the sort. Also, the thing they got about it, 2.7 to 3 million, 2.7 to 3 million dollar. Yeah, it was not euro. 2.7 to 3 million dollar each for a fine for infringement of GDPR, because I think they lacked transparency, they lacked fairness and accurate information around the processing of their algorithm that was used to manage its riders. So it was Foodinho and Deliveroo, and the Garanti is Italy's version of the Data Protection Office. So they also violate the principles of minimalization, principles of security, principles of privacy by design. So you can clearly see that there have been situations where AI and machine learning algorithms have been at fault or have not performed the way as supposed to perform, and therefore it's really paramount that we do apply each of the privacy procedures or the privacy conditions when you are developing responsible AI. So this is a quote. This now goes back to how AI now is helping us in the privacy side of things. There's a 2019 study by Gartner, and in that study, Gartner predicted that by 2023, which is the year in which we are now, 40% of compliance technology, of data privacy compliance technology, will use AI, and global spending on privacy efforts were expected to reach 8 billion by 2020. The 8 billion by 2022 was reached. That is true. 40% of compliance technology using AI, well, that's also debatable, but there's a lot of application of AI in privacy, as we're going to see in the next slide. And this ideally is how then we can apply AI and machine learning in data protection and privacy. So more importantly, now this now comes to how then the core of the discussion, how then we've seen all these good things that AI brings, we've seen all these bad things that AI brings. We've seen how we can embed privacy into AI to ensure that it is responsible and it is ethical. But then at the end the discussion, what is more important, what is more relevant is then how do we use AI in ensuring that we do achieve our privacy objectives. So quite a number of things that I've come up with here in terms of how AI can guide in the process of all in the compliance initiative in terms of how we can achieve compliance and privacy. One of the things that is important is AI can act as a one-stop center for all your data requests. So AI is adept at making decisions. So it looks at trends, it looks at patterns, it has a huge amount of extensive data, and it can be as a one-stop center instead of having data distributed across several industries, across several companies. An AI model can be the central authority, and in case a bank or in case one entity wants to make, you could say, wants to make an assessment, one could say there's already a large data model that can be used to achieve that. I don't have to have this data spread across several entities and several organizations. So that is really one way in which it can support that by acting as, could say, a one-stop center where all this information can be found. Because now it's a centralized position, a centralized place, it can be able to ensure compliance. So that's one of the things that, again, AI can provide in there. Second would be aspects in terms of data classification. There are several AI privacy tools that can do what you call, see, when you're doing a data lifecycle, you need to be able to identify the data sources and manage data throughout until its point of destruction. But the AI tools can be able to do the data classification for you based on information that I've seen in the past, based on relevant patterns. You can be able to scan the tools that can scan your environment and look at the data and say, based on what you've seen in this data set is confidential. Based on what you've seen here, this is sensitive data. Based on what you've seen here, this is information that can be there in the public. So that there are AI tools that actually do data classification, and that is very, very important because, again, you don't want to waste compliance effort in data that is primarily not covered by the law, the data that is not personally identifiable information. So AI can help you to do that data discovery and be able to do that data classification for you to be able to know which data must have privacy controls applied to it, which data can be which data can be used the way it should be used, and which data that you need for you to be able to achieve what needs to be achieved. So there are quite a number of things that can be done for you to ensure that you're able to achieve that and able to get that. Because there are aspects pertaining to federated learning. Federated learning more or less is building. It's aspects of building new models on data from different sources without sharing the original information. What that means is that I have a data source. For example, let's say for an example of the bank, I have the Credit Reference Bureau. The Credit Reference Bureau has this information about all these clients, and that information actually is contained in that particular database. What federation learning allows you is that that information will not be transmitted to the bank. The information sits back with the CRB, and all you have to do is you place a request, and the tool will be able to get that information for you and tell you whether actually that is correct or whether that information is right. But also what's important here is that it has to be adaptive in a way. So it has to learn with time to ensure that information, again, is not in several places in one centralized point. So that's one use case, again, for AI and privacy in terms of federated learning. Another key one is in terms of a breach response. It is quick and it is easy for AI to be able to identify patterns of anomalous behavior, to understand things that are not going well. So AI can effectively or efficiently identify breaches, and allows you to be able to effectively handle them without necessarily requiring, one could say, a lot of effort on your side, but also ensuring that whatever you do, you have a case for it, and you can actually be able to detect an incident while it is happening. So there's anomalous activity, AI will be able to see that and will be able to respond to that better than what traditional technology would do. Another case there then is aspects pertaining to encryption. Of course, the several encryption technologies that are privacy enhancing. For those who are familiar with homomorphic encryption. So homomorphic encryption, basically what that does is, and it is interesting because it allows you to carry out a computation on encrypted data without necessarily decrypting it. And so what that means, the result will also be encrypted. So data is encrypted, but what homomorphic encryption will do is you can run a computation on that encrypted data set without someone actually without someone knowing what is actually there. So the data is there, it is encrypted, but you can run with that, and the output is encrypted. And then even if you decrypted that data set and you ran that same algorithm over it, you'll find that the results that went through homomorphic encryption when the data was encrypted and when the data has been decrypted, it will still be the same. So that's very privacy enhancing because it allows you to process data without actually knowing what it is there. So what that probably will mean is that to data processing, if you're processing data and you outsource it to a third party, you don't need to ensure, ideally, in a way that the third party has secured the data because of this homomorphic encryption. But also to provide more security is that the data can only be decrypted by someone who has the private key, who has the decryption key. So ideally, it's very, very secure, and you can be able to achieve that. Differential privacy. Differential privacy, more or less, is it's a data obfuscation technique. So you can provide data aggregation without necessarily leaking the individual records. So what happens there is that information cannot be traced back to the source of the data. So there's an additional layer of privacy that is provided there, is in that the data can be processed, the data can be aggregated in several ways. So data of several people is aggregated into one, but someone cannot know exactly who that data belongs to because of that sort of aggregation. There's one thing I've not included here would be aspects pertaining to zero knowledge proof, which ideally means I can verify specific information without disclosing the information itself. For example, I want to log into a service. I want to log into online banking. There's another service completely separate of online banking that is going to authenticate me, and then to just send a token to the online bank and say, okay, this person has authenticated. So that information, it is zero proof. That information does not have to go out, does not have to be disclosed. I can just say the person has been authenticated, but based on whatever it is, you can't know. But zero proof just allows you to do that. So that's it for encryption, and then data discovery. Data discovery, again, as we had said initially, was in terms of aspects, as we had said, in terms of data classification as well, to allow us to be able to discover data, to allow us to be able to discover our data assets primarily, because you can't defend what you don't know. So there's a need for you to be able to do that. So AI can provide the case for that. Then multi-factor authentication, access control, more or less like an aspect of zero proof as well. So AI, as I had said, what was happening to my machine. So AI can adopt to behavior and should be able to see this person usually logs in at this time. Should I be able to give them access in terms of from a heuristics perspective? So it can adopt to users' behavior and decide that at any moment, depending on a predefined criteria. So it can check permissions, requirements, and allow users to log in freely without even requiring a password. So there's also that, and it's a key use case for AI and privacy. Then finally, there is an aspect pertaining to data segmentation. The segmentation is key because, again, I'll just give a basic example of online commerce or e-commerce. So what data segmentation will allow you to do, it will only share the information with the provider that is needed for them to deliver the service. And I'll give a basic example. I've got an account on eBay, I've put my name, I've put my card number, I've put my date of birth, I've put my residence, I've put quite a lot of things. So what data segmentation does, it says, okay, you want to make the payment. What information does the person who needs the payment need? Let's say MasterCard. So MasterCard needs your card number, they need your CVV, they need the expiry date. So the AI tool will say, okay, that is what you need. That's the information I'm sending you. Do you need the names of the person? You don't need. So it segments the data and says, for this particular request, this is the information that's needed. Then now it goes back to the second person in the chain. This person who's supposed to supply the goods. What do they need? They need your location. Do they need your name? Probably not. They need your location and need where you stay. So it only gives them the information that is needed for that purpose to be achieved. And the tools that do that sort of data segmentation to ensure that only relevant information is provided to the relevant parties. Then finally, the aspects pertaining to anonymization. So AI algorithms can help in terms of encrypting, in terms of anonymizing data, and even more importantly, can actually set expiry dates on data. So I've shared my data with a third party for them to deliver a product to my home. I expect that to expire within, let's say, 4 days. The product is delivered, then that is it. So those are really some of the use cases for AI in privacy and how AI can enhance and can promote privacy, which is really important. Yeah, so these are some of the use cases in terms of encryption, data discovery, MFA, multi-factor authentication, access control, data segmentation, anonymization. How we can employ AI in terms of bring it into the privacy realm. And I wanted to dwell much on this because it's more or less the juice of the discussion. And these are really, they're not extensive in a way. So there may be some other things that use cases that are more and over and above this, which will be very important. But yeah, these are really some of those that I felt that were key, especially for this particular discussion. So thank you so much. The pleasure of your time. And in case there are any questions, then I'll take them. Thank you so much, and back to you, Grace.
All right, thank you, Rodney, for that informative session on privacy and AI and machine learning. For now, we'll take a quick question. There's a hand up from Rehema Baguma. Rehema, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Rodney. That was a very powerful presentation. Thank you very much. My question is about your practice in Centenary Bank. I noticed, well, it was part of the advert that you work in Centenary Bank as a manager IT audit. By the way, I'm a customer and a happy one. Thank you for the great work you do, service you give us. So I would like to, I'm interested in knowing the practices, the data privacy and practices of Centenary Bank, especially in as far as the Data Protection and Privacy Act is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Rehema. I'll take the second question from Alfred, then we'll go. Then Rodney will answer the questions in the Q&A. Yes, Alfred.
Thank you very much, Grace, and thank you very much, Rodney. You have fully exhausted the topic, but I would like to ask on that part when you were talking about enhancing the AI. My question goes back on the issue that what I'm sure is AI is a very powerful tool and depends on the way it's trained. So how can organization using AI prevents data from being shared by the third-party AI providers? And the on the point that organizations that are using AI, what I know is AI is it has a challenge of biasness, especially in political environment. How can this be controlled, even in gender? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alfred. Rodney, I think you can respond to those two questions for now.
Okay, thank you. I'll respond I'll just respond to them in a backward format. So one, I'll respond to the last question by Alfred in terms of how do you remove bias, especially political bias, gender bias in AI. I think it's something that I had hinted on because ideally, AI goes through a training set, and the basic principle of the computer is garbage in, garbage out. So for you to be able to train a model, to be able to understand exactly what you want it to bring out, and for it to be able to effectively respond in a way that's supposed to respond to, you need to increase your training data. One, you need to ensure that, again, just going back to the same examples I gave, good data sets. Data set that you feed in should be accurate. But now, even more importantly, try as much as possible to avoid bias. And how do you avoid that bias? By ensuring that the data that you're feeding, the data that you're training the algorithm on, is data that is not biased, is data that is representative of the entire population. Otherwise, if you're going to feed an AI model with data 80% provided by men, then you expect it to probably not be fair, especially against women, or vice versa. So the sort of data that you feed into the model to be able to teach the model is very important, and that's really the basic way in terms of which you should be able to fight that bias, by ensuring that the data that you feed the model is an accurate representation of the overall population, and that data in itself is inclusive. So in terms of removing that bias, that is, but again, as I said, from the examples that I gave, there have already been instances where there was actually bias. And some of that bias just requires fine-tuning. Like the example I gave for the Dutch tax authority that was discriminating against people dual citizenship. That was just a basic tuning thing that had to be done, just to ensure that that decision by the algorithm had to not be systemically high risk, and that had to be done. But more or less, that usually resides in the process of the training data set, because AI will respond to queries based on what you feed it in. So the training data set is important. It should be good, and they should be representative of the population to allow to remove bias. The second question was how can organizations ensure data security for AI that's provided by third parties? So really, again, there are quite a number of things, but at a basic high level, the expectation would be that there will be what we call PETs, privacy enhancing technologies, some of which I've hinted on, aspects pertaining to homomorphic encryption, aspects pertaining to zero knowledge, aspects pertaining to synthetic data generation, aspects pertaining to secure multi-party computation. One of the things that really will be key to ensure that the data that you provide to those third-party providers is protected is for you to be able to assess that actually that third party has in place the controls that are expected to provide that. Because one of the basic things that you can look for is probably an attestation to understand that this person has done this. Then they can be able to provide that security. They have adequate levels of security with they've employed controls. But also one of the things that some entities do is what we call secure multi-party computation. So what that will happen is that SMC ideally is SMPC is a cryptographic policy protocol. What it does, it distributes the computation of data from different sources. to ensure that no one can view the entire data set. It's like how the blockchain is distributed. And very, very yeah, sure. So I'll just answering Rema's question. Rema, thank you so much for being a customer. That's important. I think your question was more or less around the privacy policies or the privacy data policy and for privacy practices that we do have at the bank. I'll answer generally, but there will be quite a number of other things that need to be need to be taken into consideration. One of those aspects would be in terms of having a privacy policy that I should be able to see, and that is key because it states our commitment, states ideally any organization's commitment to data privacy. That is important for you to do that. There'll be aspects of consent. If you look at most of the forms, there'll be aspects of consent, whether it is the physical form or it's the online form, there'll be aspects that pertain to that. That's also important. The aspects in terms of actually being able to display this policy across the bank's network, so you should be able to see that. The other practices internally in terms of data protection impact assessments, data privacy impact assessments, aspects pertaining to encryption. So there are really several data privacy practices that you can employ, and aspects again pertaining to encryption. Even awareness in itself is also ensuring that we have these sessions is very, very important. That we do have them, and for people to be able to appreciate them. So yes, so those are some of the practices that are in place. Grace, I think I've answered those. Would you want me to go to the chat and respond to a few of these?
Yes, please, Rodney. Please go to the chat and see which ones you can respond to in the next 4 minutes.
Okay, let me just start from down. Julius Karango says, do you see decentralized AI as a solution for data privacy in IoT devices which use AI? Okay, there's a lot of information collected by IoT. That is true. People have privacy concerns, especially around wearables, around smart homes. There's a lot of information that's collected. So is decentralized AI a solution? Well, my assessment will be, and my comment will be, if you look at aspects pertaining to things like federation, that AI can be decentralized, but the aspects pertaining to federation, which we've spoken about, where data can be provided or the decision can be made, but without necessarily revealing the data. So I think federation is a good way to do that. You have a central authority where that information is, and because the basic way to protect again privacy, even if you look at the decentralization perspective, is that the information that is used to make the decision sits locally on the enterprise, which is more or less the decentralized solution. So you have a central location that is local to you, which is decentralized. But then for someone to be able to access and make a decision, they don't need to see that information. They just rely on that decision. So aspects of federation, I think, is the right way to ensure data privacy, especially in IoT devices that use AI. But it will be a mixed idea. More or less to be hybrid. Some aspects should be centralized, other aspects should be decentralized. So that will be my response to that. Then I'll kindly add the presentation. I think I'll share it with the Personal Data Protection Office, and I think they'll share it with all the participants. Albert, how best do you think AI plays a role in healthcare as compared to risk exposure to accuracy of diagnosis provided by AI devices? So of course, AI is very critical again in health. In healthcare, it's been shown to provide some good benefits in that industry, to be able to solve the aspects pertaining to risk exposure. Again, any AI tool would be based on bias, but one of the things that really increases the adoption of AI is trust. What level of trust can one person attach to this particular machine making the right decision? Healthcare is very critical because the aspects where someone will actually want a human being, someone may not trust a machine to do what they're supposed to do. So what we need to build is build trust in these systems and ensure that actually these things can do the things the way they're supposed to do. Because in terms of aspects planning the accuracy of the diagnosis, I would want to think that if the relevant training data has been fed into the AI model, the AI model is going to be able to make better decisions than ideally the only traditional system would be, because it's collecting a lot of information. And again, from a doctor's perspective, the aspects, or from any profession's perspective, the aspect that the human will do, the machine cannot do. That is not in doubt, because the way God made the human brain, again, me from where I sit, I don't believe that can be replicated. So there will be aspects where the human will still supersede the machine, but of course there will also be aspects where the machine will supersede the human, because the machine is fed on a lot of information, and the decision that they are making is more informed. So again, there'll be need to get that balance right. But again, what is important is to ensure that what you're building is the AI is responsible, but also what we've built, we have trust in it, and that's how AI can play in that space. But it's already playing in healthcare, and it's doing. I want to say it's also doing a good job in healthcare as well. So that's important. Then how do we mitigate risk associated with mobile banking, where your phone number is hacked and transact while you still have the phone? I don't know why this is related to AI, but maybe I can respond to that very briefly. This one, I think the basic solution is, I'll just give me from my understanding, from my knowledge of the environment, is there's what we call IMSI. A SIM card has an IMEI, which is the serial number of the SIM card. Then it has an IMSI. That IMSI is uniquely tied to IMEI. So when a SIM is swapped, and this will be a situation of a SIM swap, when the SIM is swapped, that IMSI changes. So the best way to mitigate on that risk would be, before someone is transacting on mobile banking, get the last known, because the good thing telcos are now providing that API. We've been having discussion with telcos. Now there's an API that does IMSI validation. So when it checks, when you have your phone, someone has changed the number and has swapped the phone, so the telco is going to validate the IMSI. And if that IMSI has not transacted, or that IMSI has not been active, let's say for the past, I don't know, 50 hours, 72 hours, depending on the parameter that you fix, that transaction has to be blocked. Because the idea is that number has been changed, and the customer has to come to the bank or has to go to the fintech to show that I'm the one who has changed the number. So the basic thing there is the solution that we call IMSI validation. Validate the IMSI. If the IMSI has just been active and that API is available for the major telcos, the IMSI has been active for less than 72 hours or 8 hours, block the transaction. So that is also there. I just want to take one final one because I have another session. Thanks. Though I found the language used complicated for one who doesn't have IT knowledge, that said, we still need AI. How does data protection apply to a human resource system in an organization? Yes, and apologies for that. And just in response to that, many of the discussions, especially around AI, just one could consider not necessarily technical. You just need to have a basic understanding of, I could say, whether it is decision making using data, or just ideally statistics, because ideally it's statistics based. We just need to have a basic understanding of statistics. But apologies for that. But how does how does data protection apply in the human resource system? That is very important, because HR systems hold information of staff, and that pertains to aspects pertaining to their details, aspects pertaining to the names, the date of birth, the nationality. So data protection still applies to that. It is very, very important that even before you're onboarding you're onboarding that HR system, you need to ensure that the privacy enhancing technology is in there, but also that the data is encrypted to ensure that people don't have disclosure. There's relevant access control, because ideally, at the end of the day, the Data Protection Act covers all of us, data subjects that provide personally identifiable information. And for employees, that information will be in an HR system. So it is paramount that we do also respond to that and ensure that the HR system that we bring in place are privacy enhancing and they have privacy enhancing technologies. For example, like if I was a supervisor and I'm going into your view of the system, that HRH, do I need to see your date of birth? I don't need. You've applied for leave. Do I need to know where you stay? I don't need to do that. You've applied for a benefit. Do I need to know who your husband is? You're applying for, let's say, a baby gift. Do I need to know who your husband is? So those are really some of the basic that you need to incorporate into that HRIS system, just to ensure that you are compliant, so that someone sees only the information that they need to see. Just to ensure that again is also in tandem. And finally, what are some of the tools you can recommend in MFA and access control? Really quite a number. I'll just respond to this and provide. But at a very high level, you can use authenticators, where they are both soft or hard authenticators. You can use that. Access control, you can use adaptive access control. You can use heuristics for you to be able to understand behavior. You can use admission protocols that look at past events to ensure that the person who's authenticated is the one who is supposed to be in. So I think that is it for SADAT, but I'll provide a common or a full response to that. Otherwise, I think that is really it. And thank you so much, Grace. For those that have not answered, I think they're about 3. I'll just respond to them in form of feedback. Just write in the chat. Thank you so much. Grace, over to you.
All right, thank you, Rodney, and thank you everyone for attending. For those whose questions were not answered, we are going to record them and we'll send you emails. We're also going to share a recording of this session and the presentation. We appreciate your feedback and we hope to see you again in next month's webinar, which we shall be communicating. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.